Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. You're very welcome to our review show, and we're looking back at Armagh's first win of the National League as they defeated Monaghan on Saturday night in Castleblaney. Kernan's joining me to discuss all the ins and outs of the game and look back at Armagh's 2-point win. Aaron, a 2-point win, 2 points on the board. We'll get into the performance, but you'll take it at the start of the league.
Yeah, absolutely. From a player's perspective, there's just so much work that goes into pre-season, and Mechanic Cup, like we'd mentioned, is what it is. It's just about getting sort of minutes into boys, trying a few people out. But from first day back in pre-season, it's all building towards your first league game. So to get 2 points, to go away from home and get 2 points against a team that we always find it difficult to beat. It is. It's as positive a start as you can hope for. Like we were going well in the league last year after your Dublin and Tyrone games, and we ended up drawing with Monaghan at home. So to go away and beat them, definitely, it's all you want. Pick up no injuries, get 2 points on the board, and it sets you up well for this weekend.
And Armagh's away games they're so difficult. Obviously, the Monaghan one, then you've Roscommon and Kerry away and Tyrone on the final day. So to get 2 points away from home is a huge boost as well.
It is. It is definitely, because home does have a big bearing in National League football, or a GA in general terms. There's just a huge amount that goes with it. So while Blaney mightn't be the home of Monaghan football, they do tend to play at least one league game there every year. That's their own choice, and that's where they want to play. I'm fairly sure they would have had a number of training sessions and that there in it, in the build up to it. So yeah, to go away and beat them is it is, like I said, it's all you want at an 8-1.
And I suppose, Aaron, there's plenty to improve on as well, and we will get into the ins and outs of it. But I suppose one stat that stood out was Armagh 31 shots on Saturday night, finished with 114. So just under 50% scoring rate, which would be probably worrying, but it's the first round of the league. Maybe you just have to take these things in your stride.
Well, I suppose the first way I would look at that is I'll take the positive in that we get 31 shots off, which is good. But yeah, that conversion rate, it's not where it needs to be. Like realistically speaking, by the time you hit summertime, you'd want to be up on definitely over 75% if you're going to beat the better teams come championship football. But you could probably put a bit of it down to the pitch, on the foot conditions, wet ball, not having huge minutes underneath your belt in terms of playing minutes really. But you could maybe factor in a bit that ball doesn't travel as well this time of year. You mightn't get the same connection on it, but I did feel we were getting shot off from reasonable areas in terms of particularly the first half, where a lot of those were going wide. It was sort of slightly just outside the edge of the D. It wasn't crazy shots from sideline or being skewed off the outside of the boot. Trying to spin one over. They were narrowly going wide. But it definitely is. It's a key area that we can get better at, but it's not something that would alarm me. I think just as the weeks goes on, everyone will start to find the range that bit more. But I'd take the positive in the fact that we were able to get the shots off in the first place.
I think it was the first half really that skewed the stats. I think they had 17 shots in the first half. And maybe there's a swirling breeze. I was up in the press box, so I couldn't tell you what it was like actually down on the field. So maybe there's a swirling breeze there that it just took them a bit of time to sort of find their range, as you said.
Yeah, well, I suppose the one thing about Blaney is it's sort of set down off the road and it is hidden. So I'm not sure how much of an excuse you could put that down to. I would say it's getting the eye in. Like I said, with the best will in the world, whatever you would do in in-house training, it doesn't replicate your match day. I would have thought in terms of the Mechanic Cup, the two games, a lot of people were tried out. Then even throw in the middle of that, like there was bad weather, there was frost. So I know definitely there was another week where I don't believe they really got any pitch work done at all. So you would be slightly undercooked. And it's the same as everyone as you go back to as the clubs kick off in April. that it just takes the first few weeks for everyone to sort of get their bearings and the confidence up in terms of as you're taking your strike. So like I said, no, it's not something that I don't think Donny and the boys will be overly concerned about in terms of how they go about their forward plan for the week ahead.
I know, not that first half, it wasn't a great watch. Like the purists probably didn't enjoy it that much. Both teams sort of getting men back behind the ball and mirroring each other. And Armagh, they scored the first point. Aidan Nugent got the first point, but then they went 20 minutes without scoring. And Ethan Rafferty come up and got the second point. So, what did you make of the first half? It probably wasn't the best spectacle, but again, first round of the league, the end of January, it's not too hard to it's not a heavy criticism of them that they didn't serve up an end-to-end first half.
Yeah, it's not. And to be fair, whenever you're not there and you're not involved, you don't know what's been said in terms of how you're setting up. Like, are you just setting up in week one just to make sure that we don't concede too much early on, just see ourselves into the game, don't concede any goals, make sure that you're more compact at the back, and then try and build sort of the pace that you're playing with. See what's been thrown against in terms of your opponent's tactics. Are they going to allow us a kicking game? Are they going to try and mirror us? So I would say for both teams, there definitely was a lot of shadow boxing early on. But it was maybe just a wee bit worrying in terms of the length of time that we went without getting a score. And I think we probably were quite fortunate in the big mistake that Beggan made. I think it just gave us a new lease of life, deflated them for a short period of time. And we started to pen them a wee bit more towards the end of the first half, chipped on a few scores, and I think it was clear then that start of second half there was certainly more urgency about how we played, more aggression in terms of going after Monaghan. And I think that spell after halftime, then it clearly was the difference between winning and losing the game, because even though whatever took the foot off the gas or allowed them back into it late on, that scoring burst. And I suppose, like I said, just how we went after them, it definitely was enough to put daylight between the two teams.
And the goal was huge, wasn't it, Aaron? And I think TK was nearly not expecting it. He didn't get the best connection on the shot, and Rory Beggan probably disappointed he didn't actually save it, but it was huge, and Armagh, they needed it at that stage. Like, they were a couple of points down, and it ensured that the winning level at half time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, the kick out was a blunder that you don't expect Beggan to make. And TK, it's all right talking, but if you have an empty net and you're that far out, you have to hit the target. So in fairness to him, he did that much, and then Beggan again maybe looked like he was just a bit casual going back in terms of trying to collect the ball. But we'll take them. That's his mistake. That's up to him and Vinny Curry to worry about that. That's not really our beef. But yeah, it was good to punish him in that regard. Ethan, I think, had just come up and kicked a great score off the left on the left hand side before that, so it gave the crowd something to get behind. There was a big following there, and in that sort of cagey game where there's a lot of just carrying the ball and then going from side to side, retaining possession, that doesn't get crowd involved. There's no contest to, I suppose, entice any sort of cheering or engagement from the crowd. And then obviously the wides and the amount of opportunities we were getting, and they weren't going over, it was a bit deflating for both players and supporters alike. So to get the goal, to turn the game the way it did, to get a score straight after it, it was a huge momentum swing.
And what was your thoughts at half time, Aaron? Were you happy enough that they were going in level, or did you think, because of the amount of shots they had, that they should have been ahead, or what was your thoughts at halftime?
No, to be honest, I was happy that we were going in level, because, like I said, after 20-25 minutes before we got the goal, I did feel that they were the ones who were potentially just going to pick us off, even just drawing frees and maybe Beggan kicking them from distance, kicking the odd one from play. They definitely seemed like they were more in control than we were ourselves. So I don't think we could have any complaints at all going in. In fact, we were level. I think it was fortunate enough position to be in. But then again, you don't know what went on in the change rooms, whether the boys themselves sort of felt they were getting up to speed, or whether management had a stern word with them in terms of how they were playing or the pace that they were playing at. But yeah, like we previously mentioned, the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half was much more what we had hoped that you would see from the off. But it just gave glimpses into the potential that we have to put scores on the board in a burst, and that you're going to need whenever you're seeing off your top teams in league and championship. So I think the players themselves will have taken plenty from that phase of the game, because like it just doesn't happen by chance. It was obviously something that was talked about, it's something that they work on, and then really going after a team whenever you're sensing blood. And that spell was definitely very positive.
And what was the standout change for you? Because obviously that 15-minute spell after half time, it was the turning point. It was really where Armagh won the game. Was it just the aggression on the press, the kick-out press, or more, I don't know, movement in the full forward line for boys to pick up, like the legs Ethan kicking in for one of the scores? What did you see as the major difference from Armagh in the second half?
I would have thought, most importantly, it was a mindset thing. Well, that's what it looked like. It looked like a mindset thing where they were just going after everything in terms of whether it was their kick out, or how we were using possession, looking for that longer pass inside, having the options coming off the shoulder. It was a mixture of everything where, to be honest with you, the first half replicated an awful lot of what I seen over in Cavan, where we were getting back in numbers and we're defensively look like we're well set up and we're able to counter, but just counter in terms of a running game. Where the second half we looked like we had more shape in terms of our inside forwards or whoever we're playing up top, we're playing further up the field, which gives you a kicking option in terms of you're closer to their goal. But what it also does then, it leaves a central sort of column where if you can break into a pace running, or Kerry did it actually quite well yesterday. They left their two full forwards isolated, and the gap that was in between, once they got the turnover, a foot pass into open space to players coming running, and then they were just hitting the full forward line. The two full forwards were looping them and getting their shots off, and it was a really quick score and a quick transition. Where the first half, I felt if we didn't run from the turnover inside Air 45 to the other end of the field, there was no other option for us. And I think that's what happened, that everyone was running, then you had people trying to get ahead of the ball. We had maybe, I suppose, without being too harsh, you had people who you mightn't want taking the shots ahead of our forwards, where it looked like by the time we'd broken from defence to the half forward line, the men getting ahead of the ball were predominantly defenders who were kicking wides, where I think in those situations you'd like to see that's our forwards, and particularly our inside forwards, that are the ones that are getting the shots off. So again, I don't know the stats, and you don't want to be too harsh on night one, but from memory, particularly in the first half, I felt like it was a lot of maybe the defenders who were getting the shots off and were tailing them. And the second half, then particularly the likes of Soupy, and then once he gets a couple of scores, then that's his confidence starts to build. Others start feeding off that there, and then it becomes infectious. So again, whether it was just the way things played out on day one, I don't know. But that was for me that we were getting the right people into the right positions for simpler scores.
And just on that counter attack, Aaron, I know Michael Murphy had praised Armagh in commentary, saying that there was maybe a couple of times they'd went from defence to attack in 8 seconds, and he was saying about their sharp transition. And then I think it was Rain's point, maybe the first point of the second half, his mark, he was saying about Rain and Andrew Murnan linking up, and Murnan had blocked Rain's marker, and it gave Rain, free space to get the mark then. So that was Michael Murphy and BBC's commentary. So did you see that with Armagh's counter, the pace that they can counter at? And it's about getting the final shot away then and getting the right men on the ball when they do work it up to the forward line.
Yeah, it was, like I said, the first half to me mirrored a lot of what we've seen in Cavan. Like, Cavan were actually quite good against Armagh early on, but once we were getting the turnovers, the scores came one after another that night over in Breffni Park. And the other day, we're definitely countering in numbers, in huge numbers, and that's what Michael was saying, and that pace. for me, the way that you can that's one aspect where it is a counter and it's a running game and everyone's going. But I also feel that there's a balance to be made there in terms of we do leave two men up the field. For me, in the first half the other day, and while it was a contest in the first half against Cavan, I felt personally that the two forwards that we did leave up the field started too far out. They were standing in around the 45-metre lane, where if they go on the inside lane, you mightn't have that kick from the defence out straight away. But you have the space to allow someone to break into that can give whoever has the ball that foot pass. And then all they're looking at, like, they literally have 2-on-2 inside 50 metres. You deliver that next ball, and then we have a flood of men coming at pace. So there are certain times where you have men back and you're in numbers and you're breaking, and that works. But I do think that there is an area where we can improve on there, and that would be for me or whoever the boys have the discipline and are holding the line up the field, that they do so closer to our opponent's goal, because it just allows for simpler scores. It allows you to stretch the game even further. And it's something just over those two games in particular, the Cavan and Monaghan game, that I think just as the year goes on, clearly management will see themselves, the players will know it themselves, and you'll be able to stretch your opponents.
And Aaron, I suppose I asked you what was the main difference in the start of the second half. It shifted again then after about 15-20 minutes. Armagh let Monaghan back into the game. They were 6 points up and it looked like they were cruising, and Monaghan come back into the game. I think they got a point. Then the penalty came. Conor McCarthy scored the penalty, and suddenly it was a 1 point game then. So you went from being very comfortable to being nervous again with 10 or 15 minutes left.
Yeah, it did look like I thought if we had chipped on another pint or two, there was no way in Monaghan were pegging you back. The fact you get a pint to bring it down, then the penalty goes in, and it does. The sweat's back on again because their support's starting to get behind them. And to be fair, like I know myself from as a player, you do get a bit nervous in the field early on this time of year because, like, obviously it's last June since we had a really competitive game for Armagh in terms of that group playing together. So it's just all about getting the win. But for me, whenever it looked like it was turning again and it looked like we were going to be under pressure, we were going to do well to get the win, we got the win. We seen it out. We got another score, and we did enough. We did what had to be done to get over the line. That's a plus in terms of, if you even just go back to last year, like against Monaghan, we didn't play well at all against them in the letter grounds. We were very lucky to be drawing a half time in that game. Didn't really play well the second half again, but they just did enough to come back, manufacture a free and get the draw, where this time around, it was different. It looked like there was just that wee bit more know-how on our behalf. Granted, they're maybe missing a few more key personnel than we are, but again, that's not really anything for us to worry about. It's what we did in terms of being able to see out the game, that was most important. And we got 2 points whenever they were staring in front of us the other day, and that's all you can ask.
And Armagh were missing a few sort of regulars, and boys like James Morgan, Kieran Mackin, Ben Creeley, who all would have been, regular starters last year. Obviously, Greg McCabe and Connor Turbot as well, suspended. They'll hopefully be available this weekend. But having missed all them men, it's probably a good thing that it shows Armagh's squad depth, that they're still getting the win despite it's probably not their best 15 on the field, or what would be recognised as their best 15.
Yeah, that's true. You have a few other boys who get the opportunity to step up. Obviously, competitions are hot up a wee bit more this week with Turbo and Greg McCabe both coming back into it. You would imagine that they'll be putting pressure on for starting spots. But to be fair, I think across the board, just particularly looking at Division 1, like, there's no team who's not carrying either between retirements or substantial amount of injuries. Monaghan were no different the other day. So it is what it is. That's why you have a squad. That's why you're picking from whatever there's there, 35 players or so. It's to give boys opportunities. And like I said, there's no real room for error here. It's not maybe like what it used to be years ago, where you could sort of tiptoe yourself into it. Your league just carries a huge amount of weight. following on into championship. But it's the same for everyone across the board. And to be fair, I think, as a whole and a collective, the boys look like they're in good condition. They're obviously well in tune with what's been asked of them. So it's probably not the huge difference or step up that it might have been in years gone by in terms of even newer or younger fellas coming into the panel. They're all fairly au fait with how you want to play tactically, and in terms of conditioning wise, they're the vast majority of that panel are at it a long time now. Your pre-season, again, I don't know, but I would have to imagine it's pretty much done at this stage, because I just can't see any room for building on fitness as the league goes on. I would imagine it's more just about recovery the early half of the week and sort of ramping it back up for the weekend again. You're using nearly your games now as your main block of fitness every week. But as a player, you'd love that aspect of it. The tough slog is done and dusted. Now you're playing, you're learning, and going again and not making the same mistakes. That's always the bit I loved, that it was coming like week after week. Like say if you do something well, it's in your memory. You want more of it. You make a mistake, you either know it yourself, it's pointed out to you, you get yourself in the same position the following week. Don't make it again. So this is the best time for players. I know there's a huge amount happening, and it might seem like it's going to be a sprint from here on in, but I would rather that than maybe 3-4 weeks break, layoff. And even now as supporters, we far rather this, because it shortens the weeks now. 4 months is going to pass us by here, and we'll not know what happens.
You're talking about supporters, on Mayo are just as crazy as Armagh supporters. So Sunday, is hopefully the atmosphere is going to be electrifying, and it's going to be a tougher test for Armagh coming up against Mayo, but it's really one for particularly supporters to get excited about. And I know there's a lot of people looking forward to it, and there's already a scramble for tickets.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Like I would say we're just looking back on the Kerry game, Tyrone game last year, and Athletic Grounds, even that Monaghan game, which was a horrible Saturday night, like 13,000-14,000 people. I think we're going to see the same again this weekend. Mayo traditionally and have done for a number of years, like they will travel in huge numbers. So again, put your players hat on. So that's exactly what you want. You're playing against one of the top teams. You have a huge crowd there. That's what creates the buzz. That the league games now are taking on the feel of what championship used to be. Like you're turning up to those league games last year, you're seeing huge queues out all the roads, queues outside turnstiles, atmosphere on the ground long before a game starts, whenever you're warming up. Like that was only for championship football for so long. Now we're so fortunate that we're getting it for league games. The one thing I will say is, like, obviously after a game was over the other night, like I tuned in to watch the Mayo Galway game back, and I have to say, from what I've seen in that compared to what I've seen in Blaney, it's going to be a huge step up in intensity. Even just reading back on some of the stats from that game, like in terms of the amount of tackles that went in the Galway Mayo game compared to, I don't know the stats from the Armagh one, but to what Dublin and Kildare was, like there was twice the amount of tackles, which means twice the amount of physicality in that Galway and Mayo game compared to what Dublin and Kildare was. And just from the eye, it looked like the Armagh Monaghan game, there wasn't near the same physicality. So I think that's going to ramp things up for Armagh, but that playing group is around long enough now, as is management, to realise that Saturday night, while it was good enough to get 2 points, it's not going to be good enough this weekend. We're definitely going a step up in class, quality and intensity, and it's up to us to go and meet that. Like I say, throw in the crowd, whether that definitely adds to it, and it helps as a player to get yourself up for it. So like I said, just as this week goes on, it's exciting from a playing perspective.
So go and get your tickets. This is probably going to be a sellout, I would imagine. There's going to be a lot of people looking to go to this game. Go and get your tickets sorted. And we'll be back now on Thursday's show. We'll have Billy Joe Podden on. He's going to preview the game for us. And we'll be back next week again with a review show after the Armagh game on Sunday. So Aaron, great to have you on. Thanks for giving us your thoughts, and look forward to seeing you again.
No hassle, Sean. Thank you.